Hey guys, welcome back to Election Center, and in this video, I'm going to be doing an interesting concept. I'm going to be showing you guys what I think would have happened in an alternate 1992 U.S. presidential election if Ross Perot had not temporarily dropped out of the race, and filling in an alternate electoral map with this scenario in mind. For those of you who don't really know what went down in the 1992 election, just for those people, I'm just gonna basically in 1992, independent candidate Ross Perot was garnering a lot of support, and it was pretty much a three-way race. And then he dropped out of the race randomly in the middle, and he tried to explain it later on, but yeah, I can show you guys here. This is on Wikipedia, the Gallup surveys for 1992 election polling. And we see here Ross Perot, independent, versus Bill Clinton, the Democrat, and George H.W. Bush, the Republican. We see here Ross Perot actually leading in these polls. Then at this point, he drops out. And these are just the Gallup polls, but I think he had started to fall in support or something, and he dropped out. Then later on, he rejoined the race. But basically, when he rejoined, he had lost a big chunk of his support just from dropping out, and there were other things that happened that hurt his candidacy. But I think if he had stayed in the race and never dropped out, he would have done a lot better. I'm going to be filling in the electoral map according to this scenario. But starting off here, I'm just going to fill in what happened in our timeline, where Ross Perot dropped out of the race, and then he tried to rejoin, but he'd lost a lot of support by the time he tried to do that. So I'm going to start off, though, filling in what happened in our timeline. Ross Perot did not manage to win any electoral votes. He just did not get enough support in any state. He came close to picking off an electoral vote in Maine, but he just didn't get enough support to do that. But Bill Clinton did quite well. He got a lot of support in the South. You got to remember, this is a long time ago, 28 years ago, so the dynamics of the electoral map, just the landscape, was significantly different. So, yeah, significantly different results than we might expect, Democrat Bill Clinton winning West Virginia. We wouldn't expect that today. So these types of things we would just not expect. So yeah, it was 168 for Bush to 370 for Clinton. So a fairly wide margin for Bill Clinton on the electoral map. And we see he's able to win in a lot of southern states. He's able to win Montana. He's just able to win a lot of these states with large numbers of electoral votes. And you'll notice here, I have the numbers of electoral votes for each state set to the 1992 levels. And then I have Ross Perot added here. But what would have happened if Ross Perot hadn't dropped out of the race? Well, I'm going to show you guys this website, uselectionatlas.org. And this is a website where they compile results for all the elections. And, I know a lot of people would just be like, hey, why aren't you just using Wikipedia? But I am aware that a lot of people, maybe don't fully trust Wikipedia just because of the nature of the website. So I'm decided to use this website because this is a website that Wikipedia actually cites its results from. I noticed on one of the election pages for Wikipedia. And so, yeah, they have here Democrats in red, for some reason Republicans in blue. But yeah, I have the 1992 election loaded up, and Ross Perot's strongest state was Maine. He actually came second place in Maine. We see here nationally he got just under 19% of the popular vote, significantly behind Clinton and Bush, but he was not too far behind actually in Maine, just above Bush in Maine, and he almost got an electoral vote there in Maine. And I think if he hadn't dropped out, he would have gotten enough support to win Maine, because what happened is that he lost several points when he tried to rejoin the race. You just see here, I think he had slipped below this 32% mark by the time he dropped out, because this is the last Gallup poll before he dropped out, but I think he had slipped below that. Then when he rejoined, he only had, he quickly went up to like 15% or so. I think he built up to 20% at his peak. He did well in the debates. That helped him. But then when he tried to explain his exit by saying that Republican operatives were planning on disrupting his daughter's wedding, or saying he was being blackmailed by Republican operatives or something. I can't quite remember the details of what he was saying, but a lot of people just thought it sounded kind of like a wacky conspiracy theory, and he lost some points in the polls because of that. But if he hadn't dropped out, I guess he probably wouldn't have even mentioned that. He wouldn't have had to. I mean, I just feel like maybe that wouldn't have even happened. That whole debacle wouldn't have ever even existed to lose him those points if he hadn't exited the race. So I think that would have boosted him significantly in the polls, or he would have done significantly better. And also just the fact that he didn't drop out, he wouldn't have lost all that momentum and lost all those points from people scratching their heads. Why did you drop out? Now, we do got to consider that he was under a lot of heat from the press and whatnot, and under a lot of scrutiny, and he was sliding in the polls. But I still think he would have done significantly better than he ended up doing, because he was sliding in the polls. But whatever was happening to him when he was staying in the race, that was not going to be as bad as him literally dropping out of the race and then trying to rejoin. He would have done a lot better. So, maybe we can even add on 10 points to his 18% or 19%. That gets him to almost 30. And we see here, I just want to show you guys, a lot of voters were switching to Clinton because people weren't happy with the incumbent Bush. But I think if Ross Perot was staying in the race, some of those people who wanted a change would have actually gone to Perot instead of Clinton. Clinton was the only other option, kind of. But, he had a lot of issues with his candidacy, people maybe not approving of his character, a lot of his own problems, and I feel like maybe people would have preferred Perot in this scenario, preferred switching over to Perot, because when Perot rejoined, Clinton kind of had this in the bag, right? People were just like, okay, you know what, maybe I would have switched to Perot, but I just can't take him seriously anymore. I'm going to stick to Clinton. That's sort of my interpretation of all this. But I think this would have all helped Perot do a lot better. So yeah, we give him the state of Maine, and I think he would have won a state like Nevada, too. So that's already up to 8 electoral votes for Perot. I think Perot maybe would have gotten second place in the popular vote. And I want to show you guys, this is one of Perot's stronger states, one of these out west states, also more sparsely populated. He got 26%. Say he takes 5% from Bush and 5% from Clinton, that boosts him to 36. And if you take away 5 points from Clinton and Bush, that gets them below 36. So I think he would have taken a state like Nevada. I think maybe he would have taken Utah as well, where he came in second. Maybe he would have just won Utah. That's a little iffy, but I think he could have just won Utah. Some of these, sparsely populated states that tend to have a large chunk or surprisingly wide third-party vote compared to other states. I think they could have voted for Perot in this scenario. And the debates might have helped Perot even more in this scenario, because there's another factor. People not voting for Perot because they thought he didn't have a chance. I think exit polls showed people would have voted for Perot if they thought he had a chance, a good portion of the populace. But yeah, they didn't, because they didn't think he had a chance. I feel like maybe California he wouldn't have won. Gotta remember, Democrats were rallying behind their nominees, so I think Clinton would have pretty much gotten most of the Democrats' votes. Just some of these states where Perot really doesn't do too well, especially in the South, where sometimes he doesn't even get 10%. Don't think he really could have won those states. Maybe he could have won Ohio. I feel like people who just really want to change, though, would have done, Perot would have done well. Maybe he could have won Idaho. This is another one of those ones where I'm a bit iffy. Maybe I'll come back. But already, he's at 17 electoral votes. I feel like maybe he would have won all of Maine, but maybe one of these districts would have gone to Clinton. I'd have to think about that more. But let's look at something I wanted to show you guys here, an exit poll. Can't find the source of this exit poll, so I'll just have to use Wikipedia. So let's look at Perot's strongest support. He did best with liberal Republicans, and then all these independents, right? Conservative independents, moderate independents, and liberal independents. He got, 30%. So quite strong with them. But let's look at region. He did best in the western states. These western states here, he did best. And it looks like he also did best in the suburbs. In these more rural areas, he also did pretty well, it looks like. But yeah, basically, I think that Perot, basically, in these states where he did super well, he probably could have won these states. Montana, maybe he would have made an effort there and won. And I'm trying to think, too, if he maybe would have taken some states where from a candidate where he didn't win those states, but a different candidate would have won them because of his stronger showing. So maybe if in some states he was siphoning more from Clinton or siphoning more from Bush. Nationally he took pretty much evenly from both. But I'm trying to think here if maybe in some of these states they would have flipped to a different candidate. I feel like some of these states would have gone to Bush instead of Clinton because I feel like Clinton would not have done as well if Perot had stayed in the race. I feel like he would have taken a bit more heavily from Clinton, or taken a bit from Clinton, because these voters who wanted change from the incumbent president, not all of them would have voted for Clinton. So, sort of a way you could do this is look at the states that swung the most from Republican to Democrat. So states that swung the most from Bush Republican to Clinton Democrat. Because I feel like maybe some of these states would have changed. Because I'm trying to see here. Let's look at the results in all of these states. Maybe like Louisiana would have gone to Bush. Or Georgia would have gone to Bush. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say Georgia would have gone to Bush. This might be a bit of a risky call in terms of I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like that could have happened because it was just a 1% difference or so between them. And if just some more of those voters who wanted a change from the incumbent switched from Clinton to Perot, I feel like that could have flipped these states. In fact, let me look at the results here and see what the closest states were. So we see here now the margins in every state. I'm trying to see what are these closest states. Bush won this state by 1%. Maybe he could have expanded his margins there. But I feel like these states that super narrowly voted for Clinton maybe would have switched over to Bush. Like maybe Kentucky would have gone to Bush. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Kentucky would have gone to Bush. And, another thing is that Bush breaking his no new taxes pledge. There were voters who were upset with that. They, in protest, voted for different candidates, such as Clinton or Perot. I feel like maybe some more of those people would have gone to Perot in this case because Perot is more of a viable candidate. So once again, I feel like a lot of these super close states would have gone to Bush in this type of scenario. Let's look at the margins here where Clinton won super narrowly. I feel like maybe once we get to these bigger margins, like 5%, a bit more of a large margin, I feel like maybe we can't take so much estimating with that. We see here Clinton won that by under 5%, so maybe Louisiana would have gone to Bush. Maybe I'll come back to this one. But yeah, I'm just trying to look at these states where Clinton won by quite the narrow margin. Maybe Montana and New Jersey. But, some of these states I also think Perot would have done better and taken. But let's start off by taking most of these states where Clinton was barely able to win and giving them to Bush. Maybe Tennessee, maybe New Hampshire. So what happened in New Hampshire? Yeah, he won that by just 1% or so. New Jersey, he barely won. But some of these states I'm going to end up giving to Perot, actually. Maybe Wisconsin. I feel like some of these states being a little generous and giving them to Bush. I feel like Tennessee, that was maybe a bit too wide of a margin. And, that was not the sole factor in all this. But just some of these states where it was just really quite close. Nevada, I already gave that to Perot. Montana, Colorado. Montana, Colorado. Now, how well did Perot do in Colorado? It looks like he got 23%. So let's take 5 from Clinton, 5 from Bush. I feel like maybe Clinton could have still narrowly done okay. Let's take 8 from Clinton. So that changes it to 32% for Clinton. Let's take 5 from Bush. That's 30% for Bush. So 30% for Bush, 32% for Clinton. And then I think that would have been maybe 13 more percent. I feel like maybe Perot would have won Colorado. Because these states in the South that I flipped, Perot just didn't get enough support, I don't think. But these states where he did better, let's take a look at a state like Kansas. I feel like maybe this could have gone to Ross Perot. Some of these states I'm just not going to give to him because I just feel like the margins were a little too wide. You know, with a state like Wisconsin, let's see if I give some of those voters to Perot. How well did he do in the Midwest? That's the Midwest, right? I want to see how well he did in the Midwest. Let's look at region here. Midwest, yeah, that was one of his stronger regions. So if he got 21% there, let's boost him up a little to say 30%. Take some support. I feel like maybe that would have still gone to Clinton by a bit of a narrow margin. I give that to Bush here, but 30% for Perot, let's say. He takes a bit more heavily from Clinton, let's say. 30% Perot. So of that 9%, he takes 4 from Bush, 32%, 5 from Clinton. So that's how much? 36%. I guess Clinton would have still won Wisconsin. Yeah, some of these states, wide enough margins where I'm just going to keep them how they went. What were some of these states I flipped here over to Bush? Maybe like Louisiana. Where's Kentucky? I'm looking for Kentucky here. Okay. I think Louisiana I'm still going to give to Clinton. And I just do want to check how well he did in New Jersey, Perot. Only 15%. What about New Hampshire? Because I feel like maybe there were still a lot of liberal Republicans in New England in 1992. So Perot got 23% in New Hampshire. That's pretty good. So let's assume he takes some points from Clinton, takes some points from Bush. I'm trying to think here. Maybe he would have gone more heavily for Bush, actually. Taken more heavily from Bush in this state. I think New Hampshire was pretty solidly Republican at this time. And then it was kind of a dramatic flip to Clinton. So, because yeah, in 1988, this voted solidly for Bush. I'm going to say Perot gets 32%, 30%. So that would have to take like 5 from Bush. Or maybe he gets like 6 from Bush. 31%, 5 from Clinton, 32%. You know, some of these states, it's just, we can't know for sure. I think maybe I'll keep New Hampshire with Clinton. Let me see here. 23% for Perot. Let's just assume he takes equally from Bush and Clinton for a second. So that's 33 for Bush, 34 for Clinton, 33 for Perot. It's almost kind of a toss-up in this scenario. So we'll just leave it how it happened in our timeline and give it to Clinton. And 34% for Perot right now. Some of these other states here. Oh yeah, Texas he did pretty well. That's his home state, I think. Yeah, maybe he would have won some of these bigger states too. I think I'm going to give him one bigger state. So let's see, Texas. That went to Bush by a few points. Perot maybe would have gotten... He just didn't do as well in the South. So I feel like his effects wouldn't be as big in the South. I know he flips a few states, but Perot in Texas, say he doesn't pull as heavily, he gets like, he shifts 6% of the vote. So maybe he gets like 28% or so, 30%, 32. I feel like Texas would have still gone to Bush. Maybe Oklahoma would have gone to Perot, but that's a pretty wide margin for Bush there. I can't look at every state and make these determinations that it would have gone to Perot. Like in the Great Plains, Bush still has pretty solid strength. Maybe North Dakota, this is a pretty strong state for Perot. Let's make a determination there. So that's 23% Perot, 32% Clinton, 44% Bush. Say Perot takes 5% from both of them, that's still 39 Bush, 27 Clinton. So yeah, I think Perot would have done pretty well in a lot of states, just not quite come to winning them. But I feel like Perot would at least have won one of these big states. I mean, he was leading in the polls at one point. I'm trying to think if nationally Perot was getting like... Okay, so if he hadn't dropped out, let's assume that would have given him 5 more points. That would have gotten him to like 23%, 24%. and then, he would have done well in the debates. I feel like, yeah, Perot would have gotten like 30% nationally. So basically, these super strong Perot states where he did relatively strong, or did better than he did nationally, would have gone to Perot. Because I feel like I am being a little soft in terms of which state giving states outright to Perot. But maybe he would have won Ohio, Pennsylvania, even 28%. You got to remember these change voters maybe would have gone more heavily for Perot. Basically, I think Clinton's support would have been significantly lower because these people who wanted a change from the incumbency wouldn't have gone as heavily for Clinton. A lot more of them would have gone to Perot if they thought he was a more viable candidate. So I'm just trying to look for these states where Perot did pretty well, and there was a big shift from the Republicans to the Democrats, a big swing. So maybe like some of these New England states, maybe Rhode Island. I'm just trying to give some of these states to Perot here. We can't be super precise in this prediction. Maybe Florida could have gone to Perot. No, because that went to Bush. So I just got to look at the Clinton states. Perot really just, I guess, didn't do too well in the South. Maybe I should go out on a limb and give one of these Rust Belt states to Perot and one of these Midwestern states to Perot. Minnesota. That went for Michael Dukakis in 88. Maybe I'll give... Yeah, that went for Mike Dukakis in 88. I feel like I'm going to go out on a limb and give these two Rust Belt states to Perot. Finish it off with Ohio to Perot. And then maybe I'll end here with giving... Because that went super narrowly for Bush here in Arizona. Clinton could have won Texas. A lot of things would have shifted. And I just noticed Perot having that strength here in these more sparsely populated states out west. So I'll go out on a limb and give him some of these states. How did he do in Wyoming? He did really well in Wyoming. I'm just going to give him Wyoming. He just would have done so much better if he hadn't dropped out. I don't know about California. It was really trending leftward at this time. Democrats starting to pick up strength. I can give him Oregon, maybe. And I might be stretching it to give Perot some of these states. But I feel like he would have a chance. And then I feel like maybe one more big state would have gone to Perot. But I don't know which state that would have been, right? But, Bush maybe still would have gotten second in the electoral vote tally because the South was going pretty solidly Republican. Perot really just didn't do well in the South. So, all these southern states here going for either Clinton or Bush. And so Perot's support, right, wouldn't necessarily get him to second. Even if he was second in the popular vote, I'm not sure if he would have been second electorally in the electoral vote. Because, maybe we could give Perot Michigan or something. Some of these states, I feel like maybe I'm giving too many states to Perot. But anyway, I feel like this is maybe similar to what... This is kind of my rough estimate for what would have happened if Perot had not dropped out of the race, give or take some states. But anyway, guys, yeah, this is sort of what I'm estimating would have happened if Perot had not dropped out of the race in 1992. He would have gotten maybe 30% of the popular vote, maybe second place behind Clinton or above Bush. But this is just sort of from what I've seen, what I think would have happened if Perot had not dropped out. I feel like he wouldn't have won the race. And you got to remember, he was really sliding in the polls when he dropped out. But, yeah, I feel like it could have been something along these lines. He would have won a good amount of states. Maybe some of these states, one of these states I'll give back to Clinton, something like this maybe. But, yeah, he could have gotten maybe around 100 electoral votes, a bit less, a bit more. And, yeah, Bush maybe would have gotten a couple more states just because I feel like some of these voters who wanted to oust Bush, who ended up going for Clinton, more of them would have gone to Perot in this scenario because Perot would have been seen as a more viable candidate. But yeah, we see Perot here getting a good amount of states, a decent amount of electoral votes, and especially because he's a third-party candidate. And then it looks here that maybe it would have been an electoral college deadlock. I mean, if we flip a couple of these states, it gives Clinton a narrow victory. But there's also a good chance it would have been an electoral college deadlock So just as my final electoral map, I'll just leave it something like this, where it's a deadlock, or no one wins, no one reaches 270, and it goes to the House of Representatives. And so yeah, Perot coming third in the electoral vote, winning a lot of these western states here, these more sparsely populated western states, the Great Plains, and yeah, coming third place in the electoral vote. I think he would have come second in the popular vote. And then I guess Clinton, maybe he could have had a narrow victory in the electoral college. But anyway, guys, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and thought it was interesting. And, let me know in the comment section what you think would have happened in this alternate 1992 election scenario where Perot doesn't drop out of the race. And what you think would have happened. Let me know your thoughts on how Perot would have done and what would have changed. This is just kind of what I think. But, different opinions, right? I'd like to know your guys' opinions. But yeah, leave a comment down below and let me know your guys' thoughts. I'd love to chat with you in the comments. But anyway, so, if you're into this type of content I make here on this channel about electoral maps, polling data, election analysis, if this type of content, if you're into this sort of thing, definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel because my video is going to be right up your alley. But yeah, I say it once again, hope you enjoyed this video, thought it was interesting, and I will see you in the next Election Center video. Bye, guys.